Welcome, citizens of the globe, to the Frontend Heroes podcast, where we discuss all things villainous and heroic about the front end of software development. My name is Evan Payne. I'm a senior front-end developer at Actimo, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Scott Francis, a senior front-end engineer at Porsche. How you doing, Scott?
Really good. Good to see you again, Evan. Super excited today, not least for the guest, of course, but and to be recording the pod. But straight after, England are playing against Denmark in the Euro Cup semi-final, which is I'm as excited as the last time we were in a semi-final, which was only 3 years ago. But hopefully we win this one and actually go to the final. Looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, exciting times. And I know nothing about sports, but even I'm aware of that. So pretty cool, I guess.
Well, only if they win.
Yeah, well, the company I work for has offices in Denmark. So either way, I think it's good. So people I know will be happy. Right. So today's episode is sponsored by NetCentric, an award-winning Adobe Global Alliance partner and consultancy headquartered in Switzerland with offices all over Europe, as well as Pune, India. And they're currently hiring for a number of roles. So if you're looking, check them out. We're as ever so glad to have their support with this show. So today we have a guest. Her name is Shaundai Person, UI engineer at Salesloft and an instructor at Egghead.io. Really glad to have you here. Shaundai, could you maybe just kind of give an intro into how you got started in Frontend, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. So I started in Frontend, I avoided being any type of programmer, coder, anything like that for a long time. When I look back on it, the signs were all there for a while. It was always where my interests was in computers, and I always loved problem solving, like math problems. I was one of those geeks that in school, I preferred to do the math problems or do the extra credit and things like that, to learn more, and I just loved everything about it. And I use all of those skills a lot in front end right now. When I was in school, I just thought that programming and computers were too nerdy for me, to say it plainly. And my dad was an engineer. It wasn't like I wasn't exposed to computers or engineering or anything like that, but I just didn't see it as a path for me. What I thought when it came time for me to decide on what my major would be in college, I decided on fashion design. I don't really know why. I like to draw. I liked art. And so I thought that was a good use of my skills. And my mom told me that she was a guidance counselor at the time. And I had been talking my whole life about how I wanted to be a veterinarian. And so she was like, okay, great. You're going to be Dr. Person. That's awesome. I can live with that. I can tell the family that, and everybody can be proud. But when I sprung it on her that I wanted to be a fashion designer, she was like, listen, I will not pay for you to go to college if you decide that you're going to major in fashion.
That's some tough love.
Right. She's like, she specialized in making sure that students of underrepresented groups got into college and were successful, and helping to minimize the dropout rate for high school students. And so this was something that she was like, no, not my child, not my baby. You're not going to do something where I guess as a parent, she could see the bigger picture and see that I had all these different interests in these different areas. I had these skills in these different areas. And the way that she thought of it, it just wasn't a good match for all of the skills that I had. Plus, it's tough to just break in and be like Vera Wang or something like that just because you have a fashion design degree. So long story short, I went to school for business because I was like, all right, well, fine. I want to have a fashion design business. I'll go to school for business. My concentration was entrepreneurship. And I had an entrepreneur professor who's an adjunct professor. He'd never worked for anybody in his life. And he told me that the best way to understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur is to go into a commission-only sales job. And so that's what I did. I went, and for 2 years, it was 100% travel. And I was going from trade show to trade show, selling things. And I got into this whole, I found that I was really good at it. And sales is it's based off of soft skills. So had a lot of I got a lot of practice in communication. Eventually, like it was probably 2 or 3 years into it, I got into software sales, and I was selling to engineers. So I got into how to demonstrate a software product, and explain it from in plain English, explain it in a way that anybody could understand. And when I started selling to engineers, I was working at a company. I literally sold the software that they used to build rocket ships. I was selling to scientists, like NASA was one of my customers. So part of the job was figuring out how to translate all of this engineer speak, all of this like bifurcation and blah blah blah, and translating it into a way that I could explain to my manager and say, okay, this is how much revenue we're going to get in based on this, or this is what we can expect, like these are the projections, this is where we should focus our sales efforts, because this is where we're going to see the most growth potential in engineering. So how does this tie into why I ended up in engineering? I noticed that I wasn't, even though I was really good at the sales aspect of it, I was really more interested in what the engineers were doing with the product that I was selling. So it's a programming language called MATLAB, and Simulink. So it's a math-based, C-based language, and there were engineers who were building rocket ships, all the way to engineers who were measuring the size of oranges, like what combination of chemicals could create the largest oranges in for farmers. So, and I was just like fascinated. There's so many things that you can do with this one language. But still, like all of the engineers who I was working with had CS degrees and degrees on degrees, like PhDs in mathematics and physics and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, there's no way that I'm going to go back to school. And that part of it doesn't interest me. Like, I don't want to go back to school for physics or anything like that. Like, it was a cool course, but like, no. So, so I just kind of put it out of my mind. I went and I followed my passions for entrepreneurship and then started a business. So I left the workforce, and the business that I had was an online only business. And what I found actually most interesting, like what I thought it was going to be, again, leveraging my sales skills, but what I found the most interesting was actually customizing my Shopify website. So I had to learn Liquid, which is Shopify's Ruby-based language, to customize my website. And then it got to a point where people were reaching out to me like, hey, how'd you do that? Or could you like help me with this integration? Could I pay you to customize my website? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I can make money doing this. Like, this is pretty cool, you know? So I even thought about maybe pivoting the business, and doing just like a web customization website or something, or a Shopify customization company. And then I got pregnant, and then I was like, okay, well, in the United States, health insurance is something that comes along with employment. So I had to go back into work, and I went back to sales. But there was still this bug had been planted in my head that I was like, you know what? I think like web development might be it. Maybe it's not rocket ship development. Maybe I could do websites. That's something interesting to me. And then I saw this ad for Codecademy that said, somebody commented and they were like, I didn't go to school for this. I'm self-taught. And I was like, oh, like this is what I've been doing. Like this is kind of the track that I've been doing. And I can do that, still have my, still be a good mom, manage my responsibilities at home, still have my job. And until I'm ready to make the pivot, if I decide that I want to make the pivot. And then I can just like test the waters a little bit and see what I like, if engineering is something for me. And very quickly I realized like, okay, this is exactly where all of those skill sets that I've been kind of building piecemeal along the way, this is the thread. Like this is what ties everything in together. And so now not only do I get to practice with the problem solving and the art even, but now I also get to have opportunities to talk with people like you and leverage my communication skills and practice my communication between, like, how am I translating what the engineer is saying to our customers, or how am I helping to teach other people how to use this language that I've learned how to use. So I find that it's a perfect combination of everything that I love and I'm good at.
So I mean, Scott and I have been sitting here kind of like I've noticed doing the covering our mouths gesture because we want to jump in, not because there is so much to relate to there. Like 100%. I was on a similar path. Like I went to film school. I wanted to be this creative thing. And then over time, I found myself like building like websites for the film stuff. We had a guest on previously who, Jason Linksdorf,
Mhm.
who had a similar thing of doing a different thing and finding his way into this. And what is really interesting is the front end is such a personable place. It's not always that, of course, but it tends to pull in these people that have a social aspect to the way that they work. Not always extroverts necessarily, but like that they like to communicate, they like to show things that they build, and it's like you say, it's this nexus of things. It's great to hear that thread perpetuating as we meet more and more people on the show.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Yeah, and I'm glad that's the first time that I've heard that connection being made. But yeah, that's absolutely true. For anybody that I've met, like I feel like what I love about the front end is like one, that instant gratification of, okay, I changed a thing, now I can see what the thing looks like. But also because you are the face of everything else. Like a lot of this other stuff happens behind the scenes, and I guess to relate it to film or drama, you have the people who are doing all of this stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the back end, but if like the play is not good, if what the customers see
Yeah.
fails, if they forget their lines or anything like that, if there's like a bug in the code, then that's what people are upset about. And when they see like a new UI interface that's beautiful, that's when people get the credit for, okay, yeah, this is a great product. But there is so much that goes on behind the scenes. But yes, we are that
Yeah.
connection for the customer.
Today's episode title, and this is not the best segue, but we'll have plenty to go into here. I chose to call it Cyclops' Visor. So if you know from X-Men, Cyclops wears the visor because his eyes are so powerful that if he didn't, he would just shoot lasers at everyone and destroy everything around him. And the bridge and the segue and the metaphor or allegory that I was going for there was that JavaScript is Cyclops' default vision. And JavaScript can be way too powerful. And so you have some interest and are putting together a course on TypeScript in specific. And TypeScript is this kind of a layer on top. And in this metaphor, then, is Cyclops' visor that gives you the control and allows you to maybe like lens it open a little bit to do the precise laser, but pull it back if you want. So that's what I want us to talk a little bit about. So maybe
I've got to say, great work there, Evan, on that, coming up with that.
It's so hard to find these threads, but thank you.
Oh my god, this needs to go somewhere. Like I need a poster of this. That was really good. That was really good.
It'll be a meme. TS.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, thank you. But if we want to talk some more about this, maybe kind of where in your journey did you like first encounter TypeScript, and was it a gentle introduction, or was it like, why do I have to be doing this? Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
That's a really good question. So it was not gentle. How I encountered it, it's something that I have been avoiding for a long time because, okay, to describe myself in so many words, I am not big on rules, and that's why like I don't want to go into law or architecture or anything like that because it's just you have to do things a certain way. And so TypeScript to me is just like rules. It's like you do it this way, otherwise I'm going to complain, and it needs to be exactly like that. And so that like I was like no, there's too many errors. And I at my current company, I just switched teams, but the team that I was on is in the process of spearheading this refactor of like part of the refactor is refactoring our legacy code from Angular 1 to React 17, probably 18 soon. And then also refactoring the React to TypeScript. So I just kind of like was thrown into it, not in a sense like people were just like, okay, figure it out and come back to us when you've got it, but more just like everybody here is on board with this, so you need to get on board too if you're going to be successful. Nobody said that to me explicitly, but this is just the way that I felt about it. So I was like, all right, well, I really need to take some time and pay attention to this and figure out, first of all, why everybody loves it so much, and then figure out how to use it. And so I wrote an article on Dev2 called TypeScript, What's the Point? Because that was my question in the beginning, is like, why are people such masochists? Like, why do you want, like, what's wrong with JavaScript? Why do you not want to, why do you want to add some stuff to it that just gives you errors? Like, it was working before, it's fine. And now I see there's so many benefits to it. Like you said, okay, yeah, like Cyclops can have the vision, he can destroy everything with it. But now we have a very scalable, maintainable product that is like it has built-in documentation. So when the next person comes along, it's not going to be so hard for them to figure out what was intended when this code was written. Or even for me, who forgets what I wrote a week ago, now I can go back and be like, oh, that's exactly right. That's what I meant. Um, so I guess the first part of it was just me figuring out why everybody loved it, and then I also wanted to take on this challenge of learning by teaching. And so as I learn more, I'm challenging myself by teaching it, because I feel like, well, that's something my dad has always told me, is that that's the best way to really show that you have a true understanding. But you get so much practice and really getting into the nitty gritty details when somebody asks you a question about what should I do
Yeah.
here and why, or why are we making this big change for the entire company. So yeah, so that's how I got introduced to TypeScript and why I decided on the courses, because it was something that I'm doing at work.
I
I think
will
it's a
absolutely like layer on top, but Scott, yeah, I want you to talk a little bit
no.
as well.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think it's a really interesting approach, and I'm really like interested to know like, a couple of things. Had you done this type of thing before? Like, I know you say that like you learn by teaching, um, but had you put yourself out there like that with anything else, like with the front end, or was this your first like dip in the water for trying this out?
Yeah, this was kind of my first dip in the water, at least when it comes to technical things. So when I was in sales, I felt like a lot of the stuff that I was doing was teaching. Like I'd be teaching people why they should change. I'd be really selling them on why they should use my product versus just keeping up with what they're doing, or why they should use my product versus a competitor product. In some ways, I was, in a lot of cases, teaching somebody about this new market. Like, you have the status quo, this is what's working for you now. Just opening up this world and showing you, like, okay, I'm just educating you on this space and what the product does, and why you should use it. That was as technical as it got, though. So I had the skills of presenting and putting together a slide deck and even like demoing a product, but I had not yet explained things from a technical perspective. And I felt like that was something that was lacking, because as I looked at my portfolio of the things that I had done and taught, it was very safe and safe for me now. Like me 10 years ago, probably not, but I'm happy. Like, I can easily talk about careers, I can talk about my life and my path, but I hadn't actually taught anything that was like technical. And I was like, I have these skills, but let me see how I go. Like, let me see how I can do with teaching things that are super technical. And we'll probably talk about this, but I found that my favorite way of teaching is to teach through analogies. So I am teaching technical concepts, but I want to teach it in a way that is kind of like translating. Like, I want to say it in a way that humans can understand. So not only do I benefit from teaching it and learning it deeply, but other people can benefit from making things more accessible and approachable for anybody to jump in.
And and I mean that is actually like what we are doing in our industry anyway when we talk about design patterns and things like that. We're trying to find these metaphors or ways of explaining a complex thing through something else, and now we call them factories. And you're like, is that the best thing you could come up with for that pattern, really? And there's only a handful that people end up hearing about as well. But no, I really I think you're absolutely on the right track there. In that is a very accessible way to teach. And I also like your origin story in that you learned the soft skills first. So many of us, I think, come into the industry, get our footing, figure things out, and then by the experience within the industry, we get more comfortable, which means we do more teaching to our teams and whoever else is around us, and then we step in and develop the soft skills. And you kind of did it in reverse. I think that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
to segue briefly though, Scott, have you used TypeScript yet? Like since we were doing Angular 2 beta back in the day.
No, I haven't. Actually, I haven't. It was like so I went into TypeScript and then went out. Um, not because, not honestly, not because like I didn't like it, but because we were just using an older code base. One of the things that I did think about before I left the last company was maybe we should transition, like we should refactor everything and go into TypeScript. And it was also something I felt like maybe we should do this like straight away. So at the moment, I'm working on like a CMS solution, but writing Vue 3 components. And it was one of the things I thought, well, actually, this is a consideration. Now we should perhaps refactor this. I still think that it could be a possibility. To be honest, it probably won't be my decision because like roles are changing all the time, and it could still be something that happens. But I'm totally not against it, and I'm more in favor of it because of the benefits that it does bring. Everything that you mentioned, like the actually being able to see your errors before you run. I mean, like we all love the speed of the front end, right? Like it compiles, you see your changes, but obviously with JavaScript, that also comes with the cost of things will compile and then it doesn't run, and you're like, okay, so now I look in the console for an error and find that. If you get that beforehand, then I mean that's a huge advantage for a developer. So it's I really do see the benefits of it.
I mean, I think there are a lot. And so, like, I mean, I'm the worst maybe because there's going to be no counterpoint for you on the show. I think we're both like sold on it. But like, the one thing that I always use as an example is, that painful moment when you're passing data around the app and you're using objects, especially, they have a lot of properties, and, you know, you can sometimes pass through some arguments, and then some other times you combine those and then it passes off to something, and you're literally passing the data around to 4 different files, and then it comes from the first place from an API call from your backend, and your backend is who knows what language it's in. And you as a front ender then have to go into your dev tools, unless you have Postman working or some other thing that's helpful, or there's a Swagger file. But let's say you don't have that. Your backender just pushed to the branch and said it's working. And you're like, okay, so you try it out, and then you go into the dev tools, look at the network response, see that there, and you're like, oh, there's like 4 extra properties which I didn't know we had. That's helpful, but seriously, you should have told me. If you just had the ability to like tell your backenders to write out the interface for that like response, or even better, work in a shared like monorepo or something where you can share the TypeScript definition between the 2 places where the code is, suddenly it's like it's right there in your IDE at your fingertips, and you can choose not to use a property or access it. You can omit one and use a partial, whatever it might be. It's just this safety net you have, which is like, again, it fits super well into the superpowers. It gives you control over crazy old JavaScript, which is great. You can still do magic things, but sometimes you shouldn't, and
Right.
you should keep control. So yeah.
Yeah. One thing I really like about it is it kind of changes the way that, at least for me, it's changed the way that I think about my code, and I kind of map things out differently in my head even before I put things on paper, because I'm not thinking about, okay, this variable needs to be equal to that. I'm thinking like long term, when you talked about passing things in from component to component, like this is your future. This is like what I see your path when you grow up, the variable, you're going to do this, 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 and this. I see all that now. And so it makes my code just so much stronger. It's just like this Teflon tough code. And all of these different edge cases have been worked out and thought through. Even, like, hey, I'm passing in a variable to a function. It's like TypeScript is telling me this could possibly be undefined, but I'm like, no, it's never going to be undefined, but it could be undefined. Like, who knows? But it just makes sure that I cover every single edge case. And so it's great as I'm working on teams and Salesloft. We're growing, we're hiring, new people are getting onboarded and things like that. And I don't have to go back and try and remember what I did before. It's just like, it's already there, it's locked in, and there's no way not no way, but it's harder for you to just mess it up. What's already there. So I love it. I'm a fan.
So let me ask both of you then, like, because you're both super fans of TypeScript. Like, do you find it easier then, like, just picking up on that last point, to go back over your code and know exactly what it's supposed to do? Like, because one of the things I think any coder comes to is like 4 or 5 months down the line, I'm being charitable there, probably 4 or 5 weeks down the line, you come back and you're like, I don't know what this is supposed to do. Like, I don't know what I'm passing in here. Where does this come from? What should this be? Like, so it completely cuts this out, like, I'm guessing. And that's why you would not go back to writing like normal JavaScript.
Not 100%. So there are still instances where I coded and I was like much more clever 2 weeks ago than I am today. And I'll go back and I'll be like, wait, what is this? But it does, like, for example, if I have an object that's typed, and so what that means is just like an object that, let's say it's for an airline, I have the ticket person's name, or whoever's buying the passenger's name, email address, and the ticket number. I know exactly what that is supposed to be. Like, I know I can hover over and say, okay, this is type passenger. And from any other file, if I'm working on something completely different but kind of related to the passenger file that I was working on before, I can just hover over it and see, okay, these are all the different properties on passenger. And so instead of having to like go back and find the file and try to figure out, like, backtrack and figure out what I did and console log passenger so that I can figure out what's exactly on there. It's all just right there. So I just hover over it and that's there. So it gives you, I guess, more added context. It's not really going to explain in a way that's like, Shaundai, you meant exactly this. It just helps to give you more added context that you don't have to console log as much, at least for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, that's absolutely the case. It doesn't help protect you against kind of like renaming default imports from one file to another, which can kind of mess with you a bit too, where you pull a class in, but you rename it and you're like, why would you do that? Don't just call it something and export what it's called. Like, stop. Anyway, that always has driven me crazy. And it doesn't help when you have dynamic keys within the objects, or rather, it's really easy to use that and it turns into a bug. So essentially, if you have a TypeScript interface, which has like name is a string and age is a number, and then you have some dynamic fields, so you put these brackets around the key, which will be a string, and the value will be whatever it might be, suddenly that whole interface is any. It might as well just be any. It can take anything. So yes, you'll still know that name is there in a string, but you can type NAMY as a typo and it won't protect you against that typo because you have that final, anything goes inside here. So it's not ironclad, absolutely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it gets rid of a whole host of other things which you would have to be vigilant in watching over your code base without it. So I think it's a worthy trade-off. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up. So we're talking with adoration about TypeScript, and I get a lot of us and our listeners use VS Code, and many of us are on GitHub. And maybe see where I'm going with this. Microsoft came out with, or GitHub came out with this Copilot thing using GPT-3 or whatever. And Microsoft is like now all up in our lives. um, and, coming from an early Mac convert, right? Like there were Apple computers in my house early on. My first PC was certainly a Windows, but as soon as I could get my own laptop, I got a Mac, and I have never wanted to go back. So, but I mean, these are different things, but it's just interesting to see how the development community has shifted to embrace what was previously a kind of maybe we stay a little bit away from company. And now there's this new thing that comes out. So just to discuss, I mean, feel free to pick up on any thread within there, but I want us to talk a bit about that because it's a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm actually part of, I guess it's called the beta, but I'm part of it. And so I have access to it. I've used it a little bit and it's super cool. I think one thing so it's very helpful in helping you to get, like I've seen people doing things from CSS to regex, like all kinds of cool stuff from it. There are speculations on how it works, and there's arguments about whether or not it's good, bad, ethical, or if we're all going to get out of a job. But I think what I've seen the most posts about it is fear that this is going to take away jobs for developers. And my response to that is no. There have been a ton of times, especially in the sales world too, like people thought that AI is going to take away jobs. Like when the chat bots and things like this is on the sales side, when those chat bots became really popular, salespeople were like, oh my God, we're going to lose our jobs and everything. If you think back I mean, at the time that was really exciting, but like people don't want to talk to those AI bots now. Like it was really cool then, but there's no way that AI would put people out of a job. It just helps us to get a little bit further. So I think of it as the next step. This is something like we all used to have to use VHS, and we took all this effort to rewind. Then there were DVDs, and then, it's easier to rewind. So this is just like a building block. And so we have the next technology and we can use that to become better developers. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. Like, I think the possibility, like, it makes more possibilities for the things that we can do. It takes out a lot of the baseline fundamental stuff that we spend a lot of time just thinking through, the small regex stuff, or like big stuff that you would usually have to use Stack Overflow to do, and will help you to get more either context or new what's the word, just different ideas for ways to try different things. So I learn a lot through doing code reviews and seeing the way other engineers think and put functions together. And I'll think like, okay, this is the way that I would have put it together, or I would have did this a little bit differently, or, oh, that's really cool. Like, this is a new way to do it. So I think that if it's true that GitHub is using other engineers, like kind of scraping, I don't know. Like, I really don't care. Like if they're scraping my code or anything like that, but if they're scraping an engineer's code to figure out like the AI that goes into this, I think it's cool that now we have access to, okay, hey, I'm looking for a function. Is email valid? And instantly, instead of having to search Stack Overflow, I can just like put it into my GitHub Copilot and get a solution, and I'll build off of that. So, yeah. And as I say it now, I think like, would Stack Overflow put us out of a job? Like, would you be afraid that Stack Overflow, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's just code suggestions, in my opinion. But maybe I'm missing something big. What do you think about it?
I honestly, like, there's two things that I would just like to, like, the job losses thing. Like, developers worrying about job losses has always made me laugh. Like it's always made me laugh. Partly because I think, like, of all the professions to be in, like, we'd probably be the last out the door, of any profession. And we worry about oh, is this going to take our job? When we've spent the last 20 years developing the internet and destroying banking and travel agencies and stuff like that, and called it disruption. So to start worrying oh my God, they're going to take our job when we've just revolutionized industries that have been around forever and cost people their jobs, is kind of weird. But the other thing is, I can't help but think if Microsoft is involved in this, and going back to the assistant, the paperclip that used to jump up on Word, right? And I'm just imagining having my IDE and something popping up saying, "It looks like you're trying to write a function."
Oh no!
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't happen.
I really want that to happen. I think that would be so funny.
Well, someone will write that as well. That's too comedy gold. Maybe Cassidy Williams will do it or something like that.
Someone's got to, please.
That's a great idea.
I saw someone, posting as well saying, are you worried about this or not? And some people are. I get that. The thing is, I remember my computer teacher back, in the 90s was telling us how his first software that he wrote, he had to fill out a punch card and mail it in, and then they gave him back with the mail 3 weeks later a circuit board so he could run his program on his computer. That was early computer days. And it feels like that's the same thing. It's well, don't you want to speed that up? Don't you not want to have to set up and type all of the stuff to make a reduce, an array reduce work every single time? Wouldn't you like to have a little help coming up with a name for that thing? Because it's hard to name things, And it is just prompts right now. Maybe it'll write code, but we're always good at that, right? We piece things together. Humans in general are good at that, taking these diverse concepts and melding them together into something new. It's exciting. It's fun. Shakespeare made up all these words and things. I think it's going to be great. My concern is just with the actual thing that runs behind it being a proprietary thing. So the thing is, Microsoft licensed exclusive use of the GP3 algorithm thing that does all the piecing together. It's super smart, but they're the only ones that get to use it in proper software. People can experiment with it, sure, but they can make commercial products based on it, and no one else gets to. And that's I don't know. I don't like that, because that puts... It turns this into a money-making thing, and it always bothers me when you have these open source things, you have these great initiatives, things being given away for free to empower people, and then you have this but maybe 10 years from now, who knows? And you just it worries me. That's what worries me more than anything. And this is nothing against Microsoft in particular. That's just capitalism at its finest, but something food for thought.
That's a good point. Downer. Yeah, and I do know that there's something on their website that says that it will be a paid service at some point. So I don't know what that will look like, but yeah, Microsoft is for profit, so it's not not surprising, but yeah, we'll just have to see. I don't know. I can't even speculate on it. We'll see. See how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. And, at the end of the day, in the meantime, it's going to inspire people. People are going to put new things together. And, I'm sure someone is out there working on an alternative AI sort of engine. There's always, I hope, going to be a Firefox to the Chrome,
Right.
I just believe that there's nothing new under the sun anyway, because everyone tries it. I saw that in a small town in Ireland where we lived in. One person has a photo gallery, and it's a really small town. In the 20-kilometer radius, there were only 1,000 people that lived there, and they had a nice high-end photography gallery. Someone else decided to also open a nice high-end photography gallery. in this impossibly small town. And you're just like, really?
Like,
But guess what? They managed to coexist. People travel into Ireland, love to buy photos of the place. So it works. And, I think our web can carry on that way too.
that's awesome. That's good to hear, because it's one thing that has been top of mind for me for a long time, is just especially with like teaching people to code, teaching TypeScript, or writing a blog post about everything. A lot of people are afraid that, okay, well, somebody's already taught this, or somebody already has a React course, somebody already has written a blog on why TypeScript, and that's kind of the response, is like, there's enough room out there. If you can have two high-end art galleries in a small town in Ireland, that's very specific example, but yes, there can be more than one course for React. There can be more than one blog post about using GitHub Copilot. So I love that you said that.
Those galleries were probably run by like a husband and wife. They probably just like they probably were running this. They were just running the first one, and then like the wife said, "This guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to go into competition with him."
Amazing. The final sort of topic question that I want to go into, although we can talk as long as we want to about that, is you've been putting together this course and doing technical teaching. I've wanted to do that, but it's really hard wanting to do well, like being a person that, like I wrote an article for, one of the, like for Scotch or for CSS Tricks, and it took me ages to do. It wasn't like a fast thing, because I want to make sure I'm doing everything exactly correctly. And with a course, especially like an Egghead course where it's longer form, trying to figure out how to break it down and put it together in such a way that it's still accessible, but you're hitting everything you need to, and so on. How have you approached that? So transferring your knowledge in a very specific course kind of way.
This is a good question. So, and I have an answer for you. So, the benefit of working with Egghead is that, and at this time, is that they came out with this course club, and I guess I was part of the second cohort of this course club. And so they said, for 6 weeks, we are going to work with you on building an outline for your course. And I was like, are you serious? Like 6 weeks for an outline? Like, how does that even make sense? Like, I can list out the topics that I want to talk about. And they were like, no, you're going to learn some stuff. And so I learned so much. Like, this course there were different courses that were part of this course club. So part of it, we went through Amy Hoy's Sales Safari to learn about how to, she calls it, read customers' minds. And basically think of, instead of the stuff that you want to teach, like, okay, I'm teaching TypeScript, I want to teach about types, generics, blah, blah, blah. She says, look at what people want to learn. What are people getting confused about? And just go on this safari to figure out what your customers are saying. So that's where I came up with this TypeScript What's the Point blog. Because like a lot of people had the same questions that I did, like why isn't JavaScript good enough? And so I started thinking less about, okay, what does Shaundai need to learn, and more about like, what does anybody that's learning TypeScript need to learn? And that's how I kind of landed on this niche-ish aspect of it, where the course is called TypeScript for JavaScript Developers, ts4js.com if you want to sign up for updates. And so it helps to answer the questions for folks who are using JavaScript. 1, why? 2, how? If I'm going to start a TypeScript file program from scratch, how would I do it? But if I'm stuck in a situation like Shaundai where I have to convert this legacy code base from JavaScript to TypeScript, this is how I would do it. And then from there, all the different questions that took place along the way. So through this course, not only did I learn how to figure out what the course is about and like refine it, but we also broke down, okay, this is what the user needs to know. This is what would make it a successful course. After they came out and they knew all these topics, this would make it successful. And then this is an example that we can build throughout the course. You know how every course has like, okay, let's talk about blah, blah, blah. sorry, that's not specific. Let's talk about like how to build a store, an online store or something, right?
Okay.
So you put together this example that connects all of these different topics that you're going to teach. So I want to teach about types. The example in mine is airlines, so that's where that idea came from. But airline tickets and the types of aspects of for a passenger, the strings and the booleans and the numbers and all that stuff, and we can feed all of these different topics into this one example. And then they also teach you how to teach. So what I'm working with them on now is just how to write the copy for the each of the course sections, like what makes a good course copy, like what's a good explanation, not only from the SEO perspective, but that's part of it, but like how what can people expect when they watch this video. So and then also refining what I'm talking about. So making the each section succinct by instead of let me give you an example. So instead of one section, right, that's about what kinds of things do I need to type in TypeScript. Instead of talking about what kinds of things do I need to talk about in type, or what kinds of things do I need to type in TypeScript? Well, they're this, and this. That part, I save that instead of like actually recording the video and of me saying that. I just put that into the course description. So like just little nuances, like this is what you should include in the video. This is what you should include in the course description. All the different things that I hadn't thought about is part of what I've learned in that course. So, but then Evan, you're right. Like there is so much stuff that like recording any video for me is it takes forever to figure out what I'm going to say, to get it right. I have to do it 50 million times. Oh, my mouse was too shaky, or I clicked on the wrong thing and this error popped up. So it's stressful. And then all the research that goes behind everything. But I think like going to doing this course club with them helped me to kind of refine my thoughts and build out this outline that made sense. And I think the process made it a lot easier where instead of like actually putting the outline together as the first thing, first figure out like the broader topics and then narrow it down, and then get your example together and then put your outline together. So it's kind of backwards, at least for me. Like my intuitive thinking was like
Yeah.
start with TypeScript and then just whatever is on the TypeScript website. I'm just going to go through and like talk about each thing line by line. It's not how it's gonna. That's not how it's gonna be at all. So, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that goes
What
into
I
it, but overall, I just got that good support from Egghead. Go ahead.
what I really like about that is that it echoes a lot of other things that often happen in our industry, which is you run into some people that know a lot about their little area of expertise and are willing to share that. Now, obviously, Egghead is going to make some money off of your course too. That's great. That's a win-win as far as that goes. But, you know, like they've gathered their expertise. They do know what works, and that they're able to not just kind of like, please get this done for us, but no, we'll help you. We know these things that you haven't encountered yet. Obviously you haven't, because even if you have done some courses or instructive things before, it's going to be 1 to like 100, you know, like and you see that in other areas as well, where people are willing to go on YouTube or podcasts or wherever and share their experience, so give other people a little helping hand up. I just love it. I think we're in a really good industry, I have to say, and I say this almost every episode, but I think it's true.
You do have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for the industry. Like you do really like it.
That's good. That's a good thing. You know, you're in the right place. But yeah, I do appreciate that. And I can say like in the sales on the sales side, it's not like that. It's very individualistic. And the advice that you get about sales is, I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm knocking sales, which I'm not. You know, I respect it and I appreciate everything that I've learned from that industry. But a lot of the people that you see who are the teachers and the bigger names, the loudest people are part of this hustle culture, where the stuff that they're promoting is very self-serving, and they make it sound like, okay, you should be doing all this extra craziness, but never really give you any specifics on how to get where they are, or it's not really helpful. It's more of just a lot of pressure to do something without like actual specifics and how to get there. But I appreciate in tech everybody is just like kind of, okay, I want you to be here too, or I want to just like help other people. So let me tell you everything, and I'll be honest with you. These are the mistakes that I made. This is all the challenges that I incurred across the way, and specifically this is like documentation for how I lived my life, and you can either take what parts of it that you like, that resonate with you, or just leave the whole thing. So it's very different. It's really refreshing. So I agree with you, Evan.
Right. So we're getting to that time of the show where we want to head towards wrap. But first, we have our segment, True Hero. In this segment, we like to highlight a few of the true front-end heroes that are working across the planet and to thank them for all that they do. So this time around, Shaundai, you recommended Will Johnson, who is working for Egghead as well. Can you tell us a bit about why you think that he's appropriate to call out for this?
Yeah, and I promise I'm not sponsoring Egghead or anything. I know they came up a lot in this. But Will is just amazing. So when I talk about those people who just lift up others in the community, he is the first person that I think of. He is a person that has said that he wants to help other people, and he proactively does that, just reaches out to help people, just to talk, and just an incredible, awesome human being. And I consider him what's called the plug. Like, he's well connected, and he helps other people get in touch with other people. Like, okay, I see you're trying to do this here. You should talk to this person. Do you want me to make you an introduction? And then we'll just go ahead and make that introduction. And then now you have a new partner, a new friend, a new person to be on a podcast with. Like, just amazing. And he does so much giving, and he doesn't ask for anything in return. But if he did, there'd be so many people just be like, take it, just you got it.
That's awesome. All right. So, Will, thank you again for all that you do. We appreciate you immensely. So, finally, any proper hero is a well-rounded one. And so we want to share some simple musical and or other picks. So, Scott, what's the favorite thing you've been listening to lately?
Go on, I'll give you a pick, a music pick this time. I
Excellent.
have been reading, but this in the last couple of weeks, I actually managed to put my headphones on and do some coding, and could actually just write some stuff whilst listening to some music. But I went back to like the early 2000s and listened to a band who I used to be obsessed with, called the Libertines. Who are a pretty like minor band really in the grand scheme of things, but they had a couple of years of like notoriety, and they made two like really really good albums. So I was listening to Up the Bracket by the Libertines.
Okay. Awesome. Well, check it out if you're interested. Shaundai, how about you?
So I've been listening to a lot of hip hop instrumentals lately for coding. And so one I want to shout, there's actually two that I'm going to
Cool.
suggest as my picks. So there's Black Violin, and they are a hip hop violinist duo. Amazing. So anything by them is just awesome, but they do some covers of some of the classical classics, but with a hip hop twist on it.
Nice.
And that's really good. But then they also have some originals that are awesome. And then Brass Tracks, they're I think it's all horns, but mostly trumpets. So it's a duo, and they mostly do covers for the stuff that I've found. But there are a couple of really good songs that they have. So they have like old school R&B type of covers that they've done, but just with like trumpets. And then I think there have been some originals that I've heard, but everything that I've heard from them is just like really good. So highly recommend.
Really cool. I'll check those out. It sounds like a genre I haven't gone into, so always appreciate that. And from my side, yeah, I was listening to an episode of Song Exploder the other day, and Tune Yards came up. And so I want to recommend an album from 2018 of theirs, or hers. Well, I guess it's theirs. I Can Feel You Creep Into My Private Life is the name of the album. There's just some really good tracks on there. It's really interesting. I love the arrangement and the vocals, and yeah, she's the lead of that. Is an amazing artist all around. So yeah, that's my pick for this time. I've been listening to that. Great. So it looks like that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you should like, heart, or star us in your podcatcher of choice. Reviews and ratings are how those fancy algorithms help people to find our content, and the power to help is within you. If you have any questions or topics you want covered in our episode, send us a tweet to us at Heroes Frontend. We'll add it to our list. Until next time, heroes, remember, with great front-end power comes great responsibility. See you next time.